Egghead Anarchy, now with wonderful nature sounds. Hello and welcome to Egghead Anarchy. I'm Alex.
And I am Bryan.
And today we're going to be talking Civil War. Team Cap or Team Iron Man will be wildly speculating about the content of that film and who's the good guy based on wild speculation. So look forward to that.
First, we're going to go over some news items that should be fun and enjoyable. Catch things up from the... Catch you guys up on things that have happened over the last week. First up, Sega has done something incredibly cool. They are allowing mods to their Sega Genesis and Mega Drive Classics game available over Steam. So they've basically created a Steam workshop for this title, and people are uploading some crazy, awesome stuff. I haven't actually bought this over Steam yet, but this makes me want to get it. I'm definitely going to be picking this up. I mean, people are like, inserting a goat in place of Sonic and Sonic the Hedgehog. They're updating Streets of Rage. They're doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And just like any other mod tools, these seem to be pretty extensive. Like you can make really big changes to Sega's games, which I just think are incredibly cool. So I would recommend, checking that out. And so like one of them is Streets of Rage 2, except it makes that weird Tim Allen noise when people die. So that's the mod. Exactly. I just think it's awesome. I think it's awesome.
Maybe we'll see the first good 2D Sonic game in a long time.
I mean, I would say blasphemy, but you're not wrong. So on to the next topic.
Yeah. Crap. Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember what the next topic is now. So the mystery game, which we talked about a few episodes back, and if you hadn't heard that, was a cartridge found by someone named Neo Turf Master for the Neo Geo.
I believe the correct pronunciation of that name is Neo Turf Masta.
Masta.
Yeah. There's no ER. It's Masta. Sorry.
It was a cartridge that he found that had a mystery game on it, some sort of fighting game. Mm-hmm. There's some debate over where it was from, what it was. No one seemed to know what it was. So it was something that nobody had even realized was in development.
Right.
And they did find who was developing it, Kengo Asai, which it was a title in development called Darkseed, and possibly the tentative name Dragon's Heaven, developed by Tecmo Koei, or just Technos Japan. Wait.
That was always so confusing to me. I remember seeing some games by Tecmo Koei, some games by Koei. And then there was Tecmo Super Bowl. I never knew.
I think, they merged.
So weird.
After a while. But this says TECHNOS Japan. Technos Japan.
Oh, that's weird.
So I don't know if that's a typo or whatever. Anyway,
we know what the game is called, and
yes,
and some of the features of the game sounded really cool. Like it almost sounded like a adventure fighting game or something.
3-round fighting game where after each round you get to make choices. So you can make a lawful, a neutral, or a chaotic choice. Where the lawful choice is the most honest choice, and then. Also, there's a day-night cycle, so you can fight during the day or at night, and lawful characters are powered up during the day, chaotic characters at night, neutral characters remain neutral.
I love the whole splash of D&D.
Yeah.
Like bringing that in. That's really cool.
I wonder if by honest choice, I wonder if you could do backhanded stuff. Like if you made a chaotic choice, you could maybe take some starting health off your opponent's character or something like that. Like, what is a chaotic choice, or is it just all like story choices?
Yeah, I don't know. What I really hope is that now that this is public and these ideas are out there, someone will actually make a fighting game with these in there, because they sound like really good ideas and they'd be a lot of fun. You know what I mean? I would love to see somebody actually implement these in a game today.
It sounds wildly hard to balance.
Yeah, well, you know what? Do this. Make this. Show us how hard it is. Somebody out there.
Street Fighter V seems like it's having some pretty wild balance issues at the moment.
Yeah, well, Street Fighter V that's a whole nother thing.
I keep seeing videos online of people like hey, guess what we've just discovered? Either just an infinite combo or a nearly infinite combo, like a 90% of somebody's health bar combo for Street Fighter 5.
Oh yeah, somebody posted to the STL Bar Wars, like the fighting game group here in St. Louis. Somebody posted a video of a Guile 75% damage combo, or a 75% health combo. Took 75% of your health in one combo.
And I've seen some other ones. That's not the first one that they posted either. I can't remember who the first one is. And some other people saying that Balrog might just have an infinite combo.
Good grief.
So yeah, if that's the case, that's going to be a problem for that game.
Yeah.
Hopefully in this new digital age, they'll get a fair number of balance updates for it as things go on, which is not wildly unexpected now. It's not like a cartridge, which you can't update, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's head on to our next little topic.
Yes. So the next thing is that we finally have an actor for the new Tomb Raider movie. We know who it's going to be. It's going to be Alicia Vikander. And Vikander, really hope I'm pronouncing that somewhere close to correct.
Yeah. What else has she been in?
Ex Machina.
Okay.
She was like the main. Apparently, she was also in Man from U.N.C.L.E., which I never saw. But she was like the main android in Ex Machina, and she was very good. She was extremely good in that. I'm really excited for this casting choice, and I'm basing this entirely on, honestly, the way that she looks. She looks almost identical to Lara Croft from Tomb Raider 2013, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, she did in the promo photos. I looked up some other photos of her, and I was like, less so. So I think they probably did her up in some makeup and did her hair to get that effect. But yeah, she looks pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah. And like she seems like she's got the chops to pull this off, which I think is exciting.
I didn't even realize they were doing another Lara Croft movie.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good timing. You know what I mean? And I mean, I saw the first one with Angelina Jolie, and that was a terrible, terrible movie.
Was it? I don't even remember.
Yeah. Well, put it this way, I didn't like it at all. And I mean, a huge point that they made about the film were Angelina Jolie's breasts, like they had some kind of rig to make her breasts look like Lara Croft's breasts from the game. I mean, it was just so stupid. So yeah, this I'm fairly excited to see. The movie is going to be a prequel to Tomb Raider 2013. So it's going to be Lara Croft's like first outing as a Tomb Raider, like her first adventure.
I thought 2013 was supposed to be the first adventure. Like that was the whole point of that.
No. Like she was still kind of, green behind the ears, but it was more that it had more to do with her and her father. It was not her first adventure. She already had a team set up. She had people that she was working with.
I thought she was on somebody else's team.
No. She was like the head of the team. Yeah. So this will be before that, which I think is kind of, I mean, to your thing from last week, this is going to be an origin story, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Knowing this, I think I'll be, my excitement will either increase or decrease based on who else gets attached to the film, director, writer, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, looking good so far.
Yeah, Uwe Ball, directed by Uwe Ball.
No. Cool. So next thing up from Alex.
Oh yeah. So it has been recently discovered the Kuiper Belt object and Dwarf Planet Make. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm probably not.
How's it spelled?
Make.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it's Maki.
Maki.
I have no idea why, but that just sounds cool to me.
But yeah, has a moon, which no one had noticed before. It's right on the path, orbital path of Earth, so it's covered by Make the whole way around. And
so how do what is it, like gravity that we're seeing, like gravitational distortions is the way that we're seeing it then?
No, they just found a telescope.
We just invented a new word, telescope.
I'm not sure about Make.
Some scientists are so badass they have left telescopes in the dust and they are using telescopes now.
I am 100% sure telescope. Is that right? Yeah, just telescope photos from, actually this one is Hubble telescope. You can just see it. It's just right there. They just hadn't noticed it before. They think it's probably a significantly darker moon than Make is. Like Make's very bright, and this moon is probably very dark. So it doesn't affect the brightness very much. So there's not that telltale increase in brightness as the moon rotates around.
You mean decrease in brightness?
Increase.
When bodies, like when a moon rotates between the planet, the object, whatever,
when it rotates
Earth,
kind of in front of it, but to the side, then it has more surface area that's reflecting back. If it's rotating in front of a bright object, it reduces the bright. Is that?
Yeah. So the way that it works, like for example, with let's say with Make. So when Make's moon is between Make and Earth, the moon will dim the planet because the total amount of light reaching the Hubble Space Telescope drops because the moon is blocking it.
But the moon is also reflecting light.
Well, then that would be why it would be hard for them to spot, because the dip would be less.
Hold on, wait. Let me. All right, I'm not sure. It doesn't actually say. It just says that the brightness should fluctuate, but it doesn't, probably because the moon is so dark in the article.
The moon is so dark?
Yeah, because the moon is so dark. See, I was under the impression that when you're looking at like a planet with a moon, that generally speaking, you would get an increase in albedo, because for a time, like when it's side on or when it's kind of to the side, you're getting reflections from both objects back at you.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And then if you're looking at a planet on a sun, you get a decrease in brightness as the sun eclipses the bright body, like something that's actually giving off light. But when they're both reflecting light at you, that you get an increase for part of it.
Oh, okay. You know what? Yeah. I was confused. I was thinking of the sun.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Although I could be wrong. But yeah, point is, brightness fluctuates, and they actually didn't notice that so much. So they just caught a spot where you can see that it's at the right place that you can see both bodies in.
Oh, wow.
That's
so interesting. Good grief.
But yeah, so very cool. New moon.
That is awesome.
For a dwarf planet that maybe you've heard of and maybe not. Dwarf planets.
Make, Maki, something.
Yeah, dwarf planets are super cool.
All right. So now that you are all caught up on the happenings in video games, movies, and science, we will move on to our main event. All right, so it is time for the main events of this episode, and this is a big main event indeed. So, Captain America Civil War is coming out this Friday. Technically, it's coming out on Thursday. I'm actually going to see it on Thursday. But yeah, this is a big deal. This may well be the big movie for all of summer. There are a lot of big movies coming out this summer, and this maybe the kickoff may be the high point for the whole season. This is Marvel's most recent cinematic universe movie. It's kind of pulling everything that they've built up to this point together in one big showdown between Captain America and his side and Tony Stark / Iron Man and his side. So we want to talk about that. But before we talk about that, we want to take a step back. We want to look at where things have gone through in the movies leading up to this point. And we also want to give you just a really brief idea about kind of where we're coming from I totally fucked that up. So before we get into speculating about the movie and where it's going to go, we want to give you an idea about where we have come from. So we're going to give plot synopses for all the movies up to this point. We're also going to present you with kind of our thesis, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Before we go into the plot synopses.
And also, we want to talk specifically our thesis on why these characters are coming down on which side of the Sokovia Accord.
Yes.
So why Iron Man thinks that heroes need to be regulated and Captain America is against that regulation.
Yes. So without further ado, we will go into the theses. So Alex, why don't you go first?
Okay. So I think that each character's villains are the core of why they land on each side. So where their villains come from and who their villains are is formative in their position on the Sokovia Accord.
Interesting. And my position is that the characters' relation to the government is where their position comes from. Mm-hmm. And specifically, S.H.I.E.L.D., what their relation to S.H.I.E.L.D. and the United States government, that is where their position on this comes from. So next, we're going to go through all of the movies and provide really brief plot synopses for each film. And then we'll get into the main event.
Here's Iron Man 1, the first one, the one that kicked everything off, the one in which Tony Stark is kidnapped by terrorists, and he builds an Iron Man suit, and he's a terrible person, and then he learns to maybe not be as terrible of a person. And
maybe.
Yeah, sort of. So yeah, I mean, that's your point. Go ahead. Tell us about Tony Stark in this movie.
So in this movie, Tony Stark starts out as just this corporatist douchebag who doesn't give a shit about anybody and is an alcoholic and is just a very, very, very bad person.
Real prick.
Oh yeah. And he then he goes through. I mean, he gets, I don't know, he almost dies due to shelling and shrapnel, and then he is taken prisoner by some terrorists, and he builds the arc reactor with the help of his prison mate to save his life, or at least, extend his life. Builds the first Iron Man suit, which is a clunky, metal contraption out of a bomb.
Looks like the original comic book Iron Man suit.
Which is very cool.
Yeah.
Then he escapes, builds the real Iron Man suit, goes back, blows the shit out of that whole place, and becomes a less evil person.
Cool action sequence where he blows up a tank.
Oh, yeah. And then as part of this whole process, he really pisses off his father's old work companion, right?
And who's manager of his company in some capacity.
Yes.
Yeah. Obadiah Stane, the dude, Jeff Bridges.
Yeah. The dude does not abide. So the dude, Obadiah Stane, just really does not want Tony Stark to take over the business because he thinks he'll run it into the ground, and he's probably not entirely wrong. And so he builds a giant mech suit and fights against Iron Man. Iron Man wins, and Obadiah Stane loses. And in the process, we start to see some goodness come out of Tony Stark, and he becomes a little bit less of a douchebag and decides that he wants to use the limited time that he has left to try to do good things and try to help people out. And then in Iron Man 2...
Oh, no, wait. I want to talk about Obadiah Stane some more before we move on to Iron Man 2.
Okay.
Because I think Obadiah Stane's really important, because Obadiah Stane is all about how Tony Stark's irresponsible douchebag behavior is ruining his company and ruining his father's legacy. And he just wants to take fucking Tony Stark out because Tony Stark is such a terrible person. And I think this is something that comes up in a bunch of the Iron Man stories. And as we'll see in Iron Man 2.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, in general, Iron Man is a person who needs to be like controlled. He needs someone backing him. He's not good by himself. Like, left to himself, he's extremely self-destructive and destructive to everyone around him, even as Iron Man. Yeah. So Iron Man 2, the villain is Hammer. I forget his first name, but he's basically Tony Stark without a conscience. He's basically Tony Stark before Tony Stark was kidnapped by terrorists and had to build the arc reactor.
Well, also the villain is Ivan Vanko.
Yeah,
the constrictor Russian dude, whippiness.
Yeah, I don't know that I really count him. I mean, he's the left-hand man of the real villain, in my opinion. He, in a sense, he does build the autonomous drones that are, what Iron Man and War Machine actually fight. But he's, and I guess at some point, like, he kind of throws Hammer to the side and says, I'm going to take him out.
Yeah,
but I just found
Justin
him to be
Hammer.
I just found him to be a completely uninteresting villain and very flat and, vengeance, whatever, that's boring. But Hammer I found to be very, very interesting because, again, he is Tony Stark before Tony Stark became Iron Man. Tony Stark would have been Hammer if he had not had the events of Iron Man 1 happen to him.
And what was Justin Hammer's background?
I don't remember.
Competing company trying to best Stark.
So then, I don't remember anything about the villain of Iron Man 3.
The villain of Iron Man 3, I haven't seen this, but I listened to enough like incredible bitching about this movie. Because the villain of this movie is what's his name? The Mandarin, but it's not. It's like a lie. The Mandarin is a fake version of the Mandarin. It's just some actor hired to play the Mandarin. And then the Mandarin turns out to be some business guy or something who is behind it and was just making up this fake thing. Because the Mandarin,
So it's basically, that actually rings some bells. The story for Iron Man 3 is basically... Actually, I don't know why anybody would bitch about this. Maybe if it deviated from the comics, but the story was actually...
because people are really attached to the Mandarin character who exists in the comic books, who's a really formidable villain, and they just kind of made him not the Mandarin anymore.
Well, I think that's really important, and I think that was a really good decision for the story of the film. The story is basically that there's this terrorist called the Mandarin who is one step ahead of everybody, and is just committing, acts of violence and being a terrorist, and people want to stop him, but no one knows how. Tony Stark and Iron Man are enlisted to stop this man and figure out what's going on. Well, what you find out is that who everyone thinks is the Mandarin is not actually the Mandarin. Like you're saying, he's an actor who's paid to do this. The actual villain behind the Mandarin is a weapons dealer who is committing these acts of terrorism to force the hand of governments around the world to buy his product. While it may piss all over the Mandarin as a character, and the Mandarin may be awesome in the comics, I don't want to say anything about that at all. In the context of the movie and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this was an excellent flourish of storytelling.
Yeah.
And especially for when the movie came out, because when this movie came out, there was this height of like rampant fear over terrorists and terrorism. And the point of this movie was that the person that you think is the head of things like this, and the group that you think you need to be afraid of, almost always is not.
Yeah.
There's something behind that. There's someone behind that. That's who you need to be worrying about. And that was an excellent thing to say.
They've retconned this in one of the Marvel one-shots. So they have that guy who was the fake Mandarin like get attacked by assassins supposedly sent by the real Mandarin, who's mad that he was like pretending to be him.
That's funny. Okay.
So they're implying that there is an actual Mandarin, and this guy just kind of stole his fearsome reputation to play off of.
Okay. So the key, I think, is that by Iron Man 3, I think it had become fairly obvious to Tony Stark that the way that Stark Industries was making money was just wrong. There was no justification for it. There was no way he could sleep at night by building and selling weapons to anybody.
Yeah.
Like there was no rationalization for it at all. He had to do something different. And another key point to Iron Man 3 is that Iron Man was dealing with PTSD from the events of the Avengers. And that was, again, I think that was a really, really excellent bit of storytelling and a big part of the movie. And that may as well factor into where he lands in this whole thing in Civil War.
And I think in all these movies, or at least in the first two, and like I said, I never saw the third one, but the first two, the villains are all people that he, being a prick, has like pissed off or wronged in some way, that then they want to come after him.
Yeah, and they're all people that are very, very similar to him. I think this is what's really, really important, is that the people that Iron Man is fighting are the people that he was before he became Iron Man.
Yeah, they're all, yes, exactly. And they're people that, especially when we get to the Avengers films, specifically Avengers 2, the villain he literally created.
Yeah.
He literally created the main villain of that. Like, that movie wouldn't have happened if he wasn't being an irresponsible prick.
Well, yeah, we can talk about, like, he wasn't even necessarily being irresponsible. Like, that's something else we can talk about. But anyway, so moving on to the Captain America movies, and then we'll go into the Avengers films. So the original Captain America movie, very simple, pretty straightforward plot. It's, this nobody kid who wants to fight for his country and help people and stop bullies. Ends up becoming the ultimate tool to do exactly that. And
he fights the government, the actual government and government agency, Hydra of Nazi Germany.
Yes.
The actual Nazi government of Germany then. Like, his villain in this.
Well, and so Hydra isn't a Nazi organization. Hydra is something separate because Hydra is so bad that Hitler wanted nothing to do with them. He thought that Hydra went too far, and so they had to break off and do their own thing. And so the Red Skull is essentially Hitler to Hydra, the way that Hitler was Hitler to Nazi Germany. But Hydra was just so much more intense and so much more evil than anything that the Nazis were okay doing, that they had to break off and do their own thing.
Yeah, but I think it's worth noting that these organizations are at least quasi-governmental organizations. Nazis are the government at that time, and Hydra is like a paramilitary like organization that is running itself pretty much like the government.
Yeah, the important thing is that the events of the original Captain America movie are the basis for the formation of S.H.I.E.L.D. And that's really big. Because in Captain America, the Winter Soldier, the second Captain America movie, we find out that S.H.I.E.L.D., from its inception, was corrupted by and largely led by and could conceivably be considered just another arm of Hydra.
And again, it's a government agency that's doing the wrong thing.
Yes.
And it might be that they were corrupted or that's just what they were doing. Also notable to mention that Tony Stark designed like their fucking super weapon in that movie.
Yes.
The helicarriers were designed by Tony Stark. He did that too.
Yes.
God damn it, Tony Stark. Stop fucking everything up.
Yeah. And another thing for Captain America is that this is the organization that brought him back. This is the organization that he was fighting for. And Captain America, the Winter Soldier, is that it happened after the events of the original Avengers movie.
And after Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
And so Captain America has been, actually what it had to have been, because Iron Man 3 was after the Avengers, and Winter Soldier came out after Iron Man 3. The important thing is that Captain America has been working for S.H.I.E.L.D. for some time. He's been doing their work for some time. He has saved the world under S.H.I.E.L.D., and he's already had a hint, because in the original Avengers movie, it becomes obvious that Nick Fury has at least to some extent been lying to the Avengers. And the whole reason that he brought them together and the reason that they kind of congeal and finally become a group and actually end up fighting together was entirely a lie. And he also finds out that Hydra was responsible for creating the Winter Soldier, and the Winter Soldier was his former best friend from back when he was fighting in World War II. So now stepping back to, and I feel like this is a really bad set of plot synopses. So moving back to the first Avengers movie, specifically with just Captain America and Iron Man, this is where they first come together and where we kind of see them operating together, and they really butt heads. They have a lot of respect for each other, but they don't seem to like it's not even that they don't like each other as people. They don't like the way that each other operates, and they don't agree with the way that each other sees the world. Iron Man thinks that Captain America is incredibly naive and just doesn't understand the way that the world works. And Captain America just does not trust Iron Man, period. He thinks he has ulterior motives that are bad, and he just doesn't trust him. They're both the alpha male, and that's what's really important. And for the kind of the larger story as a whole, they have to find a way to work together as alpha males, or they'll rip the Avengers apart completely. In the first Avengers movie, they find a way to work together. And the way that they work together is Coulson is killed by Loki. Oh, yeah. And that's real, and that happens. However, Nick Fury tries to make it look like Coulson had these cards, these Captain America cards on him, and they got spattered with blood, which they didn't.
He had the cards, and Coulson did get killed. Just Nick Fury went and dipped the cards in some blood to make it really hit home, especially to Captain America. Like, this guy fucking loved you, and now he's dead. Like,
well, and here's the thing. Iron Man knew Coulson personally.
Yeah.
Like, they were fairly close.
That's true, yeah.
And Coulson was, Captain America had no idea who he was. But the key point here is that, this is espionage, classic espionage on the part of Nick Fury against the people that he's working with. It may be considered a small lie, but he lied to them and he misrepresented the truth. And beyond that, Captain America discovered that S.H.I.E.L.D. was using technology they found from Hydra to build weapons. Yeah. Incredibly powerful weapons of destruction. And most importantly, they were trying to hide that from the Avengers. And they were trying not to tell anyone. S.H.I.E.L.D. had valid reasons for doing this, but they weren't telling anyone about it, not even the people that they were asking to save humanity.
Let's not forget also that the government tries to nuke New York in that one.
Oh, yeah. So, so the last thing, and this is an Iron Man thing, Iron Man ends up diverting a nuclear warhead from Manhattan because the council, whoever the hell that is, decides to nuke Manhattan and kill millions of people. Fast forward to Avengers 2, Age of Ultron, and like Alex said earlier, Tony Stark accidentally ends up building Ultron, which is the villain of the film.
I'm going to say he was negligent in this because pretty much every single person in that film tells him that he was. Like, everybody's like, that's not a good idea. When he talks to Banner about it, Banner's like, this isn't a good idea. And he kind of does it anyway. He's got this idea that that's what the world needs, but everybody except him is seeing the danger in it.
See, here's the thing, though, and this is something I think is really important about Tony Stark's character, and I think is just about people that do what Tony Stark does, even in the real world. People tell people like that they can't do what they're trying to do all the time.
Yeah.
That's the basis of the success story for almost every major icon in history that we have.
It's not that they're telling him that he can't do it. They're telling him that even if he does succeed, he might like create something that'll be dangerous, like that it is actively dangerous.
You can't do this. They're telling him you can't do this. They're telling him you can't build an AI. You can't, and specifically they say you can't build a suit of armor to protect the world.
Yeah.
You don't tell someone like Tony Stark that he can't do what he did for himself for other people. He literally built a suit of armor for himself to protect himself and to keep himself alive. Telling him that he can't do that for other people, how would he even process that? You know what I mean? So I don't think there's any negligence. I don't think there was not a single bad or nefarious bit in him at all trying to build Ultron.
I think it's definitely negligent because he does not take the caution that he needs to. Even in the beginning, he's like, I need more time to do this. And they're like, you don't have the time. This is how much time you have. And he's like, all right, well, I'm just going to push ahead, even though I don't have enough time to necessarily do the best job at this.
Because what would he do otherwise? Give up and scrap the project and then leave Earth and humanity vulnerable to whoever's going to come after the Xindi? No, that's the thing. It wasn't negligent. It was him doing what he had to do.
He's told that it's dangerous. It does turn out to be dangerous.
That doesn't mean he's negligent.
He was warned before.
That doesn't mean he's negligent.
If you have warnings and the knowledge that it could be dangerous and you go ahead anyway because you think the risk is worth it.
That's because you think the risk is worth it, because consider the alternative.
Yeah. He's evaluating the risk for everybody else in the world, though, and taking that decision on himself, which is not appropriate.
Yes, but again, that doesn't mean he's being negligent. It means that he was wrong. And there's a difference, because if you don't factor in what would happen if he gave up and then some other alien race attacked, and let's just say, for example, Thor didn't show up, right? Let's just say, for example, that something happened for some reason and the Hulk died or Captain America died, and the people, the 5 people that saved the entire human race before, just for whatever reason aren't there. What does humanity have left? If you don't think about that, then what he did definitely seems like negligence. But if you do factor that into the equation, then I don't see how you can see it as negligence, because outside of the Avengers, humanity and Earth has nothing. They have nothing.
Well, what saved and closed the portal in Avengers 1 was the nuke. And it had to be diverted by Iron Man, but
they didn't know that would work. And beforehand, before the nuke, there was this entire army waging war on New York City. And even when the portal had closed, what would all those aliens have done if the Avengers hadn't been there to stop them? Because there was a huge number of aliens already on the planet, already blowing buildings up and destroying a city before that thing was closed. You see what I mean? I mean, like, it's
there's more superheroes than just the 5 of them in this universe, for sure.
Not
as
presented
we've seen
so far.
Since then. Well,
not presented at that point, and especially not as far as Tony Stark knew. As far as Tony Stark knew, the Avengers that he was aware of were all that stood between humanity and annihilation from another race that they don't even know exists, that no one has any concept of. No one knew anything about the Xindi before they showed up. No one knew that was a possibility. It wasn't even on the roadmap. They didn't even know they needed to defend against it. There was nothing.
There's no clear reason why the AI that he's developing it's never established why that is significantly more useful than the Iron Guard up till that point. I'm not even sure that he has a good reason for building that AI in the first place. He says it's to protect the world, but what's really protecting the world is the Iron Guard. He's just developing a new AI.
No, what's really protecting, because
to layer on top of
the Iron Guard did nothing in the first Avengers film. They did absolutely
they weren't
zero
in the first Avengers film.
Exactly. They did absolutely nothing. The Iron Guard, in fact, all of his autonomous drones barely defeated one villain in Iron Man 3.
Yeah, but in Avengers 2, they also do nothing. They also do nothing while they're controlled by Ultron. They just get knocked down immediately by everything. Like any real threat, the Iron Guard, regardless of whether or not Ultron is in play and whether or not Ultron is a good guy, are not helpful. Ultron doesn't even seem capable of defending the entire planet. How would he have done it if he was a good guy?
But again, how would Tony Stark have known that beforehand? See, so I understand what you're saying, but you're taking factors into account that there's no possible way Tony Stark could have known. And you're also not allowing things that he did know and things that he did perceive to be part of his equation. There was basically no reliable source of defense that humanity had.
Well, I'm asking how the AI would be a reliable source from his point of view.
It may not have been, but it was better than what Earth had at the time. And that's all that he was trying to do.
But it's also wildly dangerous. And he's told as much, and he should have been able to work that out, that it was dangerous.
And he's a super genius.
But he knows that it's dangerous. And as we've just talked about.
And he also knew that the arc reactor was dangerous. And he built that anyway. And that saves his life every single day. So, I mean, again, like, I'm not saying that it was clearly a bad idea, but what I'm saying and what I'm arguing is that it was not negligent, specifically that it was not negligent. He had very good reasons to do what he was doing.
He had good reasons, but he did it in a negligent manner. He had limited time. He knew he had limited time. He tried to take shortcuts while doing it.
That's not necessarily negligent, though. That's the regular process of building anything.
But see, the thing is, it's not when it's dangerous and you've been warned as such. If you build a nuclear reactor and experts come to you and tell you that it's dangerous and it could kill people, and you say, yes, but it could also provide free power, and then it explodes and it kills people, the fact that you knew that it could be dangerous, you were warned that it could be dangerous, and you did it anyway because you thought there might have been a good idea, that is negligence.
So, okay,
like, what else would be negligence?
Out of the context of the movies, really
negligence,
quick, are you saying that NASA is negligent?
In what?
Because based on what you just said, NASA is negligent.
In what capacity?
Especially during the Apollo series and all their tests and everything like that. Space travel is dangerous. Anything to do with going into space, launching the space shuttle, launching any kind of rocket is...
NASA didn't kill a bunch of civilians.
Okay, people have died in the service of NASA.
Astronauts. It's different when people have signed on and are on board and know the risks. Tony Stark is putting people who are not on board, who have not accepted the risks. Like I said, he's making that decision for the rest of the world just all by himself. And that is not okay.
I still don't see how that's negligent.
Well, what would be negligent? Negligence doesn't have to be malicious to be negligent.
Okay. Negligence is shortcutting something without a credible reason. Because things get shortcut all the time. Like safety parameters or safety constraints and all kind of stuff get shortcut constantly in the name of getting something done.
So, I mean, negligence, let's talk about the word negligence for a second, because I think we're kind of having difficulty here. In law, according to this, negligence is failure to use reasonable care that then results in danger or injury to another.
And I think that's exactly what we're debating. I'm saying that I think he used reasonable care.
Oh, I don't think he did it. He definitely should have skipped the project if he knew that he could not complete it reasonably.
And see, that's the thing. He could not have. That was not an option. Skipping the project was not an option. And that's what I'm trying to get through.
Of course it was an option.
No, it was not. Because
why not?
Because then Earth would have had no defense against Xindi 2.0.
That's what he thinks, but it's not.
That's what he thought. And this is what I'm saying.
It's not true.
Okay.
And it's not a reasonable thought in that universe.
It's not true to us as moviegoers who know that the Avengers will always save the day. It is
but it's
true
also worth
to Tony Stark in the universe where he has absolutely zero assurance. In fact, in the first Avengers movie, what he saw was everyone bitching and moaning and splitting up as soon as things got hard. What brought people back together was the death of Coulson, and the fact that these cards, right? That was it. Short of that, the Avengers, and again, there was no promise that Thor would come back. There was no promise that the Hulk would come back. There was no promise that anyone would come back. And all that he had, all that he saw, were these weapons of mass destruction in the hands of a government who had tried to take away his technology for absolutely no good reason, except that they didn't trust him, and then who had developed these weapons of mass destruction in secret and then lied to the very people that they wanted and that they were asking to defend humanity.
I think the only reason he feels like that, even in universe, is because he just feels like he's the only one who can solve anything.
Well, right.
He's unwilling to let S.H.I.E.L.D. do anything or let anyone else take care of anything.
Well, yeah, and that's true. And I think that to some extent...
But I think that's unreasonable. Even especially in this universe where they know magic is real. They know that superpowers are real. They know all these things.
No, they didn't. No. Again, they didn't know that. They found that out when the Xindi attacked.
They found that out when... No.
Yes.
Iron Man didn't. They found that out because Thor's been around. Thor has this magical overtone, and Tony Stark doesn't buy it. But there's enough in this universe that is beyond normal to know that there are other options out there, that this single like access to this scepter is not the only possible solution to this. Like, that's not the only thing in the universe that can provide great power. Like, it's just not. And they should be able to tell that at this point.
No. Nothing but the Avengers have succeeded in any way. In fact, everything that you're talking about, like the Tesseract, for example, right? The staff have only ever been used for evil, ever.
So then why? But that's what he uses. So does he think that he's going to be the only one?
Yeah, because he's a super genius. He's like the smartest person in the world. Like, he's done all these amazing things. He's turned things around. He's done so many things that people have said were impossible that, yeah, I think it's completely reasonable for him to believe he could do that.
All right. I don't think we agree on this at all. We'll have to leave it up to our audience to feel whether or not Tony Stark was
negligent,
made the right choice in making Ultron. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was clearly the wrong choice. I'm just arguing that it was not from a place of negligence. That's what I'm arguing. Yeah.
And whether it was not the right choice or the wrong choice, but the right choice or the wrong choice morally for him to make. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, whether or not it was a...
I think where we're disagreeing isn't because I don't think it was the right choice either. When you're talking about the larger context, what I'm talking about is from his perspective, and I think that's where we're disagreeing.
Oh, I think he totally believes that he was making the wrong choice, but I think that he should not, like, a reasonable person in that situation would not feel that that's the reasonable choice.
Well, and okay, so this brings us into Civil War. So we're not really kind of following what we said we were going to do, but that's fine.
Well, I think so much of Civil War comes from the Sokovia Accord. I mean, so much of Civil War being about the Sokovia Accord comes from Avengers 2, where Ultron pulled Sokovia out of the ground and trashed an entire city and fucked shit up, right?
Well,
I just mean, like, I think that's a big, like, that is the big inciting incident for the events of Civil War is Avengers 2. And it builds off of other things that have happened, but that's the inciting incident.
So I think, yes. So I guess really quick to kind of stick to what we said we were going to do originally, really quick, all of this that we've talked about, the plot synopses, where we're at now is the Avengers. Yes, they saved the world in Avengers and Age of Ultron, but just barely. And they caused a lot of damage. They did a lot of harm, and they hurt a lot of people doing it. And so now in the MCU, the question, I think, is this worth it? Is this team of people worth all the problems that they're causing?
Yeah, and I'm sure it'll come up, too, that in Captain America 2, Captain America destroyed those helicarriers over Washington, D.C., and they crashed into Washington, D.C., and they were probably like $1 billion of government assets that were completely destroyed during that film. Also, he took out a bunch of other fucking S.H.I.E.L.D. assets throughout that whole movie.
Oh, so yeah, like almost all of them. Like, yeah, I mean, what was it? The whole Triskelion was like just completely obliterated.
And I think it's worth noting, and this is what I was getting at, is that the villains that Captain America tends to fight are people who are sanctioned by a government, like who are the government. Like, his villains are those people.
Yes.
And he's always done the right thing by going against what the government wants.
Yes.
Even in the first film, where he is working for the U.S. government, the U.S. government does the wrong thing.
Yes.
They don't let him fight.
Yes.
They keep him doing USO shows.
Yes.
And it's when he tells them, like, fuck off, I'm going to do what I know is right, that he gets the appropriate outcome.
Yes.
Whereas Iron Man is fighting people who are off their rocker, doing whatever the hell they want, and also, like, is doing stuff that turns out bad for him in the long run.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, he's fighting people that are him before he became Iron Man.
He's fighting his own bad choices. Like, his negligence for his company results in alienating Obadiah Stane. So he can blame himself a lot and look at himself and be like, I make bad choices, especially looking back on the Ultron thing and being like, maybe I did make a bad choice there. Maybe somebody else needs to stand next to me and be like, fucking stop. Don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that. Well, and more than that, I mean, to your point about Ultron, so like where we're at now, I think what Tony Stark has realized is that more than someone telling him, hey, don't do that, that's a bad idea, because that's what happened in Ultron. People were like, hey, don't do that. That's a bad idea. And he's like, no, fuck you. I'm going to do it anyway. I know what I'm doing. I'm Tony Stark. What he needs is people to have the authority to say, no, don't do that, and stop. And like to forcibly prevent him from doing things that will cause harm. Right. And that I think is key, because I think what like the internal realization, because something that like I can't even believe that I have as much respect for Marvel as a film studio as I do, because this is such a like there are so many deep things that I think I'm just assuming that they're going to get right about this. Like to have Captain America and Iron Man fighting each other in a way that is credible requires some amazing stuff story wise. I mean, you have two heroes fighting each other, and for that to be credible and for them to have been heroes up to this point, you have to have done some amazing storytelling, which I think Marvel has done. I mean, like Marvel has never presented Iron Man as being like a cut and dry hero, right? He's been a guy who ended up doing the right thing and ended up saving a lot of people, but barely.
He's the good guy. He could easily be the bad guy, but he's mainly the good guy because he's so charismatic. Like, of course he's the good guy.
Yeah, and
really,
all
that charisma.
Really, it's kind of
you'd make him
the
a
people
jerk
around him, because I mean, it's not even necessarily just Iron Man. It's War Machine who's there to be like, hey, Tony, stop! Like, no, this is what we need to do. You know,
Pepper Potts.
And what's that?
And Pepper Potts.
Oh God, yeah, for sure. Oh my God, like she's totally his moral center. So without them, he's just this genius alcoholic who sells weapons that kill people. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So whereas on the other side, you have Captain America, who is just, I mean, balls to bones. He's a good dude. You know what I mean? Like he just really has a good moral compass, except that he trusts people and organizations to the extent that he lets them completely pull the wool over his eyes and do horrible, terrible things. Mm-hmm. You know, so like,
I think we're seeing a reversal here. So Iron Man up to that point has done whatever the fuck he wanted, and it's worked out really badly for him.
Yeah.
And now he's saying, I need to stop, and somebody needs to make me stop.
Yes.
Whereas Captain America has done whatever other people have wanted, and he's realized that that's not working out well for him.
Yeah.
And he needs that to stop. And so we're seeing this kind of like realization from both sides, but now they're kind of like flipping around in some ways.
And specifically, like S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist anymore. Not even in the TV shows. Like S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. is not a thing. No.
Because S.H.I.E.L.D. showed up at the end because they're like, it's S.H.I.E.L.D., how S.H.I.E.L.D.'s supposed to be of Avengers 2.
Oh, that's right. No, you're right. Thank you. Yeah.
I kind of thought they brought S.H.I.E.L.D. back, but it was like the good S.H.I.E.L.D.
Well, and I guess
S.H.I.E.L.D.
I'm thinking of like I'm not current with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I'm thinking of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The last time I was watching that, the S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't exist. Like everything was in ruins and all kind of stuff. But yeah, you're absolutely right. In Age of Ultron, they brought it back. But from Captain America's perspective, how is this any different from the old S.H.I.E.L.D., who was really just Hydra?
Or what if they're good now? What if they decide to be bad later? Then they'll be in charge still. And whatever.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And I think that's a key, is that, you know, Hydra or S.H.I.E.L.D. was, you know, poisoned by Hydra from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. But there was also a lot of really good people that founded S.H.I.E.L.D. and a lot of really good, well-meaning people that worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. Even, you know, present day. I mean, fucking Captain America worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. You know what I mean? So
Nick Fury, he's a good guy, even if he's a dick. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, yeah. Coulson, like everybody worked for S.H.I.E.L.D., you know what I mean? And so, so even if this S.H.I.E.L.D. is starting out well, all it takes is one person. Mm-hmm. All it takes is a very, very small number of people, you know, at most, to turn this bad. And even
Herman Zola.
What's that?
Herman Zola.
Yeah, exactly.
He was the only one who turned,
Yep.
It seems like, at least from what the movies have said, that they took Herman Zola as prisoner and he started working for them, and then he just reestablished Hydra.
Yeah. And it doesn't even need to be straight up villains. It could be people who are trying to do the right thing, like in real life, like the NSA. You know what I mean? They're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to keep us all safe, but they're fucking being creepy in the process. You know what I mean? So there's just so many ways that, and that I think is really the core of this movie and this story, is someone needs the power to do what is right no matter what. Who gets that power? And it sounds like, for very credible reasons, Tony Stark is saying, I cannot have that power. And anyone who follows me cannot have that power because I have had it and fucked it up. Whereas Captain America is saying, you know what? I'm not perfect, but I've followed too many people who have that power, too many groups who have that power, and every single time it has gone poorly.
And also, you can't be taking my power to make decisions that I think is right from me.
Yes.
And make those decisions for me.
Yes. Yeah. So like I was saying before we were recording the podcast, like I honestly don't know what side of this I fall on. And this is something, again, that I have just an incredible amount of respect for Marvel for, because the way that they've set this up, both sides they're really credible. They have valid arguments that they're making. And I can totally understand where each side is coming from. And I'm really hoping the movie honestly doesn't pick a side. Like I'm hoping that something happens to kind of stop the fight, kind of like in the original Avengers, and get them to say, okay, you know what? We may completely disagree on this, but right now we need to work on this thing. Like we need to solve this thing. I'm fairly certain
that it'll be fairly balanced, but that it's going to come down Captain. That's kind of how it is in the comic books. Also, the movie is called Captain America, not Marvel's,
not Iron Man or the Avengers or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if it was gonna, it'd be Marvel's Civil War or something like that, as opposed to Captain America Civil War.
Yeah.
Just a thought on how that name might be betraying the plot a little bit.
Yeah, I guess narratively, I think it's far more interesting, and it leaves more doors open for them if they don't come down on either side. Like if they don't support either side, because like if they just kind of cut the story off, like I said, and like, oh, we need to fight this thing now, we can't keep doing this. Well, then they can circle around later, or maybe not even come back to this in earnest, but there can be tension. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like between the different characters.
They can resolve it kind of the way that the comics books did, which is something goes wrong that makes the side that Iron Man is on kind of indefensible. So Iron Man builds like a giant Thor robot that kills somebody. I can't remember who it kills, but it just like murders somebody. And then everybody's kind of like, well, we can't be on that side anymore because they've gone too far. Like maybe that argument's good, but like they've wildly overstepped like what's appropriate. And that kind of maybe the philosophical argument could still be alive while, the actual argument is gone.
Yeah, I guess it's hard for me to see how the movie,
or maybe they'll convince Iron Man that he's a jerk and he'll just retire forever, pretty much. Because let's be real, Robert Downey Jr. is not doing these movies forever. He has to stop at some point, and it might be that this is kind of the point where he's going to start winding down and being like, because they keep kind of saying it. He keeps being like, I guess I'm going to retire now. Maybe this is actually the point where he's like, actually, yeah, though, for real.
I can't see how they would do Infinity Wars without Iron Man, though.
Well, no, he'll be in Infinity War, but that'll be like he's actually retired, and then things will go really wrong, and he'll get the suit out one last time, kind of thing.
I don't know. We'll see. This is definitely something we're going to talk about next episode. It's tough for me to see how the movie could side with either and
retain the credibility of those characters.
Yeah. Especially because it's not just Iron Man v Captain America. They have teams.
And I would think that what would happen is that something would happen such that somebody else kind of becomes the villain, and then they all kind of switch sides to be on one side. And maybe it's not entirely resolved, but like the person behind the Sokovia Accords is probably General Ross, who has been villainous previously and was kind of the villain in that Hulk movie, I think, that I didn't see.
You mean the Hulk movie that never happened?
It kind of happened. Iron Man's
the Ang Lee or the
No, not the Ang Lee, the other one. The other one kind of happened and is kind of in continuity.
Right.
Yeah, whoever was in that one.
The Edward Norton one?
Yeah, Edward Norton, that's right. And it might be...
Yeah. He was really good. I just didn't like that movie.
Yeah.
But he was very good.
It might be that they kind of go like, oh, yeah, so this whole thing, even if maybe Iron Man has a point being on the side of this, like there was some ulterior motive for this, and now everyone has to like bind up to stop that ulterior motive. Like they're getting control of the superheroes. That way they could hand the world over to Thanos or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're saying is kind of what I'm saying too. Like you're just thinking of a different, like I'm thinking of someone like Thanos drops in and is like, and they're like, okay, we got to stop this Civil War thing because we got to stop Thanos. You know what I mean? And it sounds like kind of like maybe what you're saying, except maybe Thanos is a bit further off.
Yeah.
Like there's like a middleman and they're finding out that middleman is kind of pulling the strings for this whole thing. And either way, as long as that happens before the movie picks a side, to me, I think that makes more sense. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the movie will find a way to do it where I'm like, oh, God, yeah, totally.
Well, okay, I think the reasonable answer is that Iron Man
know.
fucking needs somebody in charge of him, but Captain America really doesn't. Like, it might just be that there's some sort of selective like answer to this question. Maybe once you fucking do something wrong once, they're like, all right, we're going to put you on superhero probation where you have to like report in. Well, or if you're a new superhero, you go on superhero probation. Or if you're a superhero who keeps having problems, you go on probation and then you're in charge. And then if not, you're fine.
Wait, so question.
Captain
what side
America.
of this are you on?
Because again, I feel like Tony Stark needs somebody, but it's the fact that Tony Stark, in classic Tony Stark fashion, takes a really, really big step when he could take a much smaller step. Instead of Tony Stark saying, like, I need somebody in charge of me and me, because this is my issue, Tony Stark saying, everyone needs this.
Everyone does.
And I'm going to push it onto everybody kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of where I draw the line, is that Tony Stark is pushing it onto everybody.
Yeah, totally. All right, well, this is, I feel like fucking Christmas is coming on Thursday. I am so excited for this. I can't even stand it. So yes, we will, I think we're going to call this the show for this week. Thank you guys for listening. This has been a lot of fun. Super spirited debate. I loved it. So way you could support us if you enjoyed this is by liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel if you want to do that, our SoundCloud stream if you want to do that, whatever podcast app you listen to, whether it be that Stitcher or Overcast or the iTunes, the Apple podcast app, whatever it is, like and rate the show and comment and all that kind of good stuff. That would be awesome, because we want to get the show out to as many people as possible. And you can tweet at the show at Egghead Anarchy on Twitter. You can also tweet at me, Bryan, at BSG Bryan on Twitter.
Yeah, or me, Alex, at Senior Don Gatto.
Absolutely. So with that, we are going to head out for the week, and we will see you guys in 7 days, where we're going to talk about our thoughts on the movie, because we'll have seen it.
Have fun seeing that too.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.